ABC, it's Vince. How you doing? Gonna do my 5th video, I think now. Even though I called my last one 5th. I guess I don't know how to count or something. Anyway, decided for this one to do stuff that I've gotten within the last couple months. I don't get to go shopping too often. I've been doing more on eBay, selling stuff so that I can buy stuff kind of thing. But I do have a bunch of stuff, and it kind of shows the diversity as far as different types of stuff that I listen to, and give you more of an idea of where my range is. Anyway, first of all, I'll start with what's actually playing. This isn't actually a vinyl record. I've got a bunch of CDs that I've gotten recently too. I may show in another video. This is actually an Azerite album called Boogaloo. This is actually from 1999, so it's a newer one for them. It's actually a pretty good album. It still features Dan McCafferty, an original bass player and drummer. And this is actually the last album the drummer's on before he passed away. And then the drum seat was taken over by the bass player's son. It's kind of interesting. Kind of like Jason Bonham playing the Zeppelin kind of thing. Anyway, it's actually a really good album. I've only listened to it a couple times so far, but it's really cool. So anyway, that's one new thing. Now, let's start with an oddball. This is basically 3 different groupings of stuff. I've got Goodwill stuff, I've got stuff from eBay, and then I've got some stuff that I bought at a website called vinyl.com, and it's all reissues of like psych rock albums that I kind of like. I've actually gotten stuff from them a few times before, and I really like the reissues. Anyway, I'm going to start with a couple things. My wife and I took a class at a library about 10-15 minutes away from here. And one time as we were walking to the room where the class was in, I happened to notice there was a rack with a bunch of records on it. I had no idea they had anything for sale there or anything. And decided one time after the class was done to sift through it and see if I could find anything. Well, for the most part I couldn't, and the ones that I did find were ones I had that I didn't really need another copy of. But I did find one jazz album. I actually don't have anything by this person, and he's got a boatload of albums because he recorded from the 50s all the way through the 80s. This is Maynard Ferguson. I know my dad had an older album from the 50s by him. This is called Live at Jimmy's, and it's Live at Jimmy's. It's a live album, and it's basically a 70s big band album as far as jazz goes. But there's decent versions of stuff. It's not real corny or anything. And so this actually is kind of cool. It's actually a double album. It was in really good shape, and I think I paid $1 for it. So, even if it wasn't in good shape, it was $1. Anyway, to go with this, it's kind of interesting. They did have some CDs on the opposite side, and they really didn't have much. But I found this, and I'd never seen this before. And so this is kind of a grail for me at one of these kind of places. For those of you who know who Stars is, this apparently is a bunch of unreleased stuff, or unreleased versions. Half of it's unreleased, I guess, early versions of songs that were on their first album. And then the other ones are songs that were done later after their 4th album, which is the last one they put out, with a new lineup that ended up turning into a band called Hellcats, but does include the original singer, Michael Lee Smith. So this is actually from '87. It's on Performance Records. Now I guess there's a vinyl version of this. It's a picture disc, which I've never even seen before. I just read about it. But I guess the picture disc is basically these pictures on it. That's on the CD cover. So that was really interesting. I mean, you never expect to find anything like this in a library. Or even at Goodwill. I mean, this is pretty interesting. So, that was kind of cool. I know it's a CD, but it went with the other albums. I wanted to show it at the same time. Okay, so let's go with the rest of my Goodwills. There's a little variation right here. For some reason, I don't tend to find much rock at Goodwill that I don't already have. I usually end up finding jazz albums or lighter albums, singer-songwriter or folky stuff or more pop rock, whatever, stuff like that. But for jazz, I actually don't own any albums by this person. Dakota Station, Time to Swing. So this is actually somebody my dad didn't have any albums by, but I'd heard about her. And interestingly enough, where I used to live, there was a street called Dakota Station. I don't know why. Anyway, this is actually in pretty decent shape. It's not great, but it's an original. It's even got a sticker from the place that it was bought at originally, which is kind of interesting. Actually came in a lined sleeve. So it's got the old Capitol label from like the early 60s. That was kind of cool. And we got, now this was for me, is pretty rare find. I mean, I've only seen this a couple times, and I've got a bunch of albums by this guy. But this is actually his first album. This is Michael Stanley. And on this album, he's got a bunch of famous guests playing with him, most notably Joe Walsh. And his drummer, Joe Vitale, Todd Rundgren, Rick Derringer. We've got a lot of big people on. This is actually his first album. It was on a label called Tumbleweed, which is out of Denver. There's a sleeve. This is actually pretty rare. I don't know how much it's worth or anything, but to find this at a Goodwill, and it's in really good shape too. So that's cool. This is Kenny Rankin. This is one of those singer-songwriters I've never bought an album by. I may have seen from time to time. That's one thing about Goodwill, because they don't have a lot of stuff, you're more likely to take a chance on somebody you wouldn't, because there's not as much stuff to choose from. There's not a whole bunch of stuff that you can say, won't take that, I'll take this instead. Well, you don't usually have that option at Goodwill. So you take a chance for $1. And this album's pretty good. It's kind of in the James Taylor vein, if you like that kind of thing. He does some interesting cover versions plus some original stuff. Now this, I mainly bought because this guy's from my hometown. His name's Don Potter. It's actually on a Christian label. No, it's Myrrh actually. It's a really short album. There's only 8 tunes on it, and they're all like within 3-4 minutes. And it's basically acoustic pop stuff in the, Christian vein. But like I said, I bought it because he's actually from my hometown, and I live in Vegas now, and it's kind of weird to find an album by him. So I picked this up because it was cheap. Singer-songwriter vein again, Joanie Mitchell, another one I didn't have by her, For the Roses. Good for her, It's before she started to really get more produced and have more of a band playing with her, what have you. But there's still some really good songs. I guess the most famous one would be You Turn Me On, I'm a Radio. But this is in pretty good shape. Got a little one of those goofy gatefolds with a hole on the inside kind of thing. Back to jazz. Ahmad Jamal, piano player I like. Original album in decent shape. Argo. Didn't have this one. Joe Jackson's Jumpin' Jive. Now after he did his first 2 rock, punky, new wavy kind of albums, he turned into a jazz person for a few albums. And this is like big band jazz. I don't know if anybody's heard this before, but it's almost like 40s, 50s jazz kind of. So it's okay. It's kind of more in the, Glenn Miller, more upbeat kind of thing. But I guess because the performances are more modern, it's cooler for me. But it's okay. Buck in good shape. Last, George Benson. Some of his albums are schmaltzy. I prefer the ones from the 60s and 70s. 60s, the farther back you go, the better they are. This is from 77, so this is getting towards the end, where they turned him into like this R&B pop star, and he barely even played guitar anymore. But this actually has some guitar on it. So there's your inner sleeve, what have you. So, buck, whatever. Alright, that's it for that stuff. Now, this is eBay stuff. Mostly stuff that I bought from selling other stuff. This one's pretty rare, and most of these I've pretty much bought for $5 or less. I try not to get anything too expensive because I've always been a bargain person. I will go to a record store and try with 20 bucks and try and get as close to 20 albums as I can of stuff that I actually want. So I tend, if I do buy anything other than dollar albums, it'll tend to be anything $5 or less. So I can tend to work that way on eBay too. So I look for bargains and stuff that people don't bid on. So this one's called Sea Dog. I've looked this up. This is fairly rare. It's from 72. Don't know much about them. Don't really recognize any of the people. But listen to it once. It's actually pretty good. Early 70s, psychish, hard rock. And not real heavy, but still a decent album. So that's that one. Now this is one that I had on CD, but the CD sounded terrible. It was one of those early mid-80s CDs that they put out. They had like no guts to the sound and really thin sounding. Plus the picture of the cover on the sleeve had ringwear on it. Now this was released by MCA, should have had a clean cover somewhere, but the picture and the cover on the CD actually had ringwear around the outside. This is a clean cover of the album. This is the first 3 Dog Night album. Front and back, very clean. Record's in really good shape. So I got this. I burned the CD just so I had it in case I wanted to listen to it in the car or something. But I'm happy to get this. I've got most of their older albums. And I'm a singer, so I like bands with good singers, and there's 3 of them in that one right there. Okay, Barefoot Jerry. This is actually their first album now. For those unfamiliar with Barefoot Jerry, they were one of the early country rock groups, but actually had more influences than most country rock. Most country rock was like